The latest set, in the last, let's say, 3 years or so, there have been a lot of new developments, very quick developments, and a lot of interest in this because people have realized that it's not only of use to artists but also useful in.
Hi everyone, I welcome you to the first ever episode of our in-house podcast, DaveAIR, where we will be talking about interesting ideas, trends, fundamental concepts, behaviors, phenomena about our industry and market with our team, with our friends, with our colleagues, industry experts, and so many more people. And in this episode, we are addressing the buzz around generative AI. And we have Dr. Ananthakrishnan Gopal with us. He is our CTO and co-founder here at DaveAI. So I get the privilege of introducing him to our audience. He holds a master's in electrical engineering from IISc Bangalore. He also holds a doctorate from the KTH Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm. And he started his career with Vertis Technologies, and he worked with an artificial intelligence company called Numenta. And then he went on to becoming the chief engineer, research and development at Samsung, where his role was instrumental in developing the Samsung's S Voice, now called Bixby. And then he joined us as our CTO and co-founder, and his role here is to mentor engineers and head the technology wing. You enjoy having intellectual conversations, and you like music, and it's really nice to have this conversation with you. And let's talk about everything Gen AI, all the buzz that is there around it. I'm sure you would know better how LinkedIn is going crazy about trying out these new tools, and we have a new tool in the market almost every single day. So to begin with, probably if we can just talk about a little bit about what is it and how long this has been around, all of that.
Thanks first of all for your lovely introduction. I think it was nice hearing about myself in the words that you put together. Gen AI. So when I was doing my PhD around 15 years ago, Gen AI was a very a novel field. There were a few researchers working on it. AI mostly was used for prediction and classification, most of the functions. But the capability of AI to actually generate new images or new texts or new voices was always there. And a text to speech, like you enter a text and then it generates the voice, right? This text to speech technology was something that I myself worked on. It was I would say the technology that I worked on during my PhD was a sort of like a stepping stone to what we have now, but it was, I would definitely an older generation of it. And my colleagues around have also worked on generative AI in image and text, etc. But it was all at a very academic level and not something that could be really used yet at that stage. But over the years, I think there are two things that have changed. One is that the computation power, right? When we were doing this research, GPUs were not yet used for training artificial intelligence networks, etc. It was just being researched on, right? To say, okay, how can we use GPUs, etc. And now, of course, there are dedicated hardware which can accelerate the performance of training artificial intelligence networks to a great level. And not only that, I think there are a lot of advancements in the algorithms of how to train and things like that, and as well as availability of data on the internet. So the ability to collect all this data, large amounts of data from the internet, and use them to train large models, and then that makes it an industrial application, which means that the tools now exist for people to develop, companies to develop and monetize on, right? All this was, of course, done over a period of 15 to 20 years, and here is where we are of late, at this point of time. Yeah.
And
what is Gen AI? I guess that's the thing you were asking me. And so when you say AI is basically a toolkit or a set of algorithms which can take in data and can be trained to give a particular output, right? So the most common applications of AI are in detection. So if you want to detect, so if you have an image, you want to detect where is the person in this, that's one of the things. Where is the face in this, or where is the body in this, or where is the car in this, that's one of the things. Detection can also be for speech. For example, when you say something and you want to detect that this is a name that the person said, or something like that. And it can also be used in other kinds of signals for detection of anomalies, for example. So the signal can be, in this case, something that for example, the stock market, right? It's numbers. So whether it's an image, or it is a set of words, or it is speech, or is it any other sound, or it is other data, which is industrial data, like for example, the output from sensors, or stock market variables, etc., the values of the stock market, etc. So all of these are just numbers, and AI is able to take these numbers and be trained to do something with them, right? So of course, one of them, as I said, is detection. The second is prediction. So if you want to say that there is some data that we have received and we want to predict what that is, right? That is one of the things that you want to do. So you have some bunch of data and then you want to say what is going to come next, right? That's one of the things that you can do with AI, which has been very successful. And if you look now, in the biggest application of prediction is to predict the stock market, and AI models do way better than combination of the basic metrics that are there, and sometimes they even do better than actual human beings who are doing this repeatedly. So they're pretty successful, as you can see. So the third thing that they use is for classification. So to say that, for example, we want to classify, somebody has said something and there's a speech signal, and you want to classify into what were the words that were said there, right? Or you have an image and you want to say who is this person who's in the image, or which is this car in this image, for example, right? So you want to do something of that sort. So detection, prediction, classification, and generation. So you want to now say that, okay, now I can predict and I can classify, but how will it be for me to generate a new something similar to what we have seen, but generate a new image? So people have been trying to create drawings, they have been trying to create musical compositions, they have been trying to create poems, they have been trying to create prose also. This kind of research has been going on. And generative AI was more thought of something that is likely to be more of a entertainment value than of something useful, right? When we were doing the research, to be frank. So we were thinking that, okay, how can we produce new types of music or new types of songs? Can we, or somebody who is, for example, good at writing a poem would want to set it to a tune. So can we use AI to do that, right? So that it complements what we are good. But on the other hand, it can be somebody who has a tune but doesn't have the words to fit into that. So something like that, right? So where you sort of augment artists and creators to do something. It was like a tool for that, and it was already used quite a bit. For example, a lot of this, the new electronic music, is actually computer generated. You can't say AI generated, but it is still computer generated. And also there are a lot of things which process sounds in a way. For example, auto tune. That is pretty much that has a lot of the AI algorithms already in that, which is used across the industry now. So it was already being used, but if a few and far in between. But I think the latest set, in the last, let's say, 3 years or so, there have been a lot of new developments, very quick developments, and a lot of interest in this, because people have realized that it's not only of use to artists, but also useful in things like marketing and in mass media, for example, in movie making, in creating advertisements, in all kinds of things, which is where it requires a skill which is not where an ordinary skill is not sufficient. right? So with this realization, a lot of companies also pumped in this money to do better, to do this whole thing much better, and we can see the results of that this year.
Okay, so you mentioned about skill, right? So I was thinking, how much does a technology like this help somebody with relatively less skill or less expertise or less training, but more ideas? Okay, how will somebody of those, of that description benefit from something like this versus somebody who's trained for it, skilled for it, and has spent those years in time and resources to do it?
Sure. Gen AI is actually a tool, right? So if you want to make a comparison, you can imagine a carpenter in the 14th or 15th century when they did not have high precision hammers, like good hammers, to actually do their job. So they would still do woodwork, but it would be much tougher for them and they would take much more time. But once blacksmiths invented the hammer and the nail, it really made the life of carpenters much easier. Not only that, I think that there could be more people who could be trained as carpenters and still be sufficiently skillful to do their job, right? Without having to go through that much of training before they can be utilized. So the number of carpenters surely would have increased because of the invention of the hammer and the nail, right? Similarly, if you look at typing, right? Typing was a skill that sort of recently died in our, that skill is no longer required, more or less, because everybody became typists. Everybody was able to use the computer, type for themselves. So the requirement of somebody with specialized skill of typing was less and became less and less. And I think something similar is likely to happen, right? So now I think at the point at which the typists got phased out, right? That sort of a thing is also probably happening to certain types of jobs every time. Like, so for example, there used to be a job of a like Android developer, right? Which was very popular at one point, but it is now waning. It doesn't mean that number of Android apps are reduced, but many of the Android apps are actually written through a lot of AI-based tools, right? And and it's not just AI itself, but it's a collection of knowledge. So there are many libraries which make development faster, so which have already implemented. So it's a collection of everything. It's a collection of many things that the society takes in with a new technology and adapts itself to that. So that's what I see what would happen now in Gen AI. So for example, roles of people who used to write a lot of copyright, right? That would be moved to AI. So the standard copyright where people don't sign it, right? That will now be taken up by AI largely, right? But things that they sign, in the sense like a story or a novel or a poem, where you feel it is creative enough that you can put your signature to it. These kind of things, while AI can also generate that, the quality of those things and the ability of being able to produce those kind of high quality pieces is actually much higher. Now, that doesn't mean that people who actually write poems would not be able to use this, right? So they might be able to use it to get new ideas, to brainstorm and come up with things. So they may be able to write more number of poems, better poems, and faster, right? So the point about people who are already skilled or who are trying to develop a skill, them being replaced by AI might still not happen, but they might be able to utilize AI to do their work better and faster, right? Now, but the people who are just mediocre, who are not really the ones who really bring something to the table, right? They can be replaced easily. They are the ones who are going to lose their jobs first. So mediocrity and mass production of mediocre stuff, which was currently done by a large host of humans, would actually be done by AI. But you would still need humans to give direction to AI, to say that, okay, is this the right output? Is there something that is not working fine for me? Can I change it in a way? And things like that, right? So that would it would still require humans. So if you, let's take a graphic artist for example, right? A graphic artist has something in his mind or her mind, and they want to bring it out in the form of their sketch. So they might be able to create a basic sketch and get it refined through multiple iterations through AI, right? And that process will become faster. So a graphic artist might be able to now put forward more ideas in the same amount of time and bring them to fruition faster because of AI, which has already been happening slowly. For example, if you look at animation artists, they used to spend a lot of time just simply tracing, hand movements, etc., right, at 25 or 30 fps. It was a very tedious and time consuming job. Most of that has now been taken care of by algorithms. They are of course AI, but they are not Gen AI, but they are like previous iterations of the current AI that is there, right? So it has largely has been taken care of by computers and algorithm, right? And now that has been further reduced by AI, because a lot of things are now auto generated. You can create scenes and things like that, right? So I think it's been so there is a lot of things that will change in the way that people do things, and also at how fast people do things, which I think is natural. It's been happening all through our civilization, and we don't have to be afraid. We just adapt. We don't even have to adapt. We just adapt. It just happens that way. Because as soon as you see a tool, you start finding more uses of it. You start finding more things that you can do with it. You start finding faster ways of doing it. But if you are, the only problem you might have is if you're saying no, I'm a purist and I would only do it this way. Unless you are really, really, really good, you cannot be a purist any longer. But if you are really that good, a purist who is not using tools. So for example, even now there are these carpenters who are highly, highly valued, who create these kind of masterpieces without nails, right? They just make they just join and stuff, and that is extremely expensive. But you have to be really, really good at that. So if you're very skilled at it, you can continue to be skilled, and I'm sure that there will be a market for that. There will be still value for it, right? But but for everything run of the mill, you might as well use the tools that you have.
Right, absolutely. Also, that I'm again on the subject of skills here, but with something so new in the market, though it might not be so new in the space, like there's a rise of new skills. Something that I have read a little bit about is prompt engineering in these months, that how people are training themselves for it, or how there are these now courses for prompt engineering, and people have been doing a lot of research on the subject of this kind of skill development as well. So what are your thoughts on that, and how to pick it up, how to master it, and if you think there are other skills like prompt engineering that might be relevant?
Yeah, so I think it's but natural. For example, when the textile mill was first invented, right? People, hand weavers, that was what they were trained in. But then people became trained on how to use the looms, etc. Right? So they developed new skills, and I don't think there was a bit of friction, but it happened quite seamlessly, and that's what is going to happen now. What you call it, of course, might be different, but in this case, what you call prompt engineering is basically you trying to doing multiple iterations of how to use that tool well, right? Prompt engineering is nothing but trying to hit the nail with your hammer in multiple angles, right? In different ways to see, okay, which is the best way that I can hit the hammer with, and then finally you learn that, and that's what is called prompt engineering now, where people are trying to figure out what is the best way that you can use that tool. In this case, pose the right questions or pose the right prompts to the AI to get the right output, whether it is an image or it is a text or it is a video or something of that sort, right? So in all these cases, I think what is the right way, or what are the precise instructions that you can give, which can get you the desired output. I think that's what is going on now. I think a lot of this is still under development. I'm sure that it will get much more refined, and we might even call it something different. We might not call it prompt engineering, but just prompting or something like that. Because as there will be a point in our society where all of us are capable of doing that with ease, just like how everybody was capable of typing now, right? So at some point, of course, we will all be very adept at doing this. But just like there were typing courses at some point, even after the invention of computers, there will be courses about how to use this, and a lot of this is just practice and experience, right? And I'm sure that these courses will also learn and adapt and become better. And even today there are typing courses, online typing courses, although they're not as popular as they were before, but they still are, because everyone needs to type still, and you would like to do it more effectively and efficiently, right? So those two exist. So I'm sure that this will happen, and we will have more such courses which come up. Now, to answer the second question, which is to say what else is likely to come up, that's a guess. I mean, I can't really say for sure, but one of the things that might actually come up is using the existing tools to build something different. Okay, so I can give an example, right? So now what happens is that if you want to create a scene, if you look at, say, Mandalorian, right? So Mandalorian series, they had the backdrop of Mandalorian was completely generated using 3D images, right? And this was created by engineers, 3D artists who would develop that landscape. Now, you can create an image of the landscape now, as of today, with just with a few prompts, right? Just you need to fine tune the prompts, but you might get the image that you want to do. But that is not going to be changing, or that's not going to be used in other things, right? Or it cannot be created in such a way that the shadows are falling in the right places and all of that. But you could use that as a basis for creating something, right? You can use that as an inspiration for doing something faster, quicker, and so on, right? So I think using the AI output to do something different is actually quite a lot of this. I think one of the things, you remember when we inaugurated this office, some of the teams were trying to use AI for doing something creative, right? There were some very interesting things that people did. So of course we knew that we could use AI to write a poem. The poem is not great, but it's a poem nonetheless, and probably better than what somebody would have spent a long time to write, one of us who are not poets, right? So it would probably be better, but people then combined that with something that we developed, like our AI engine, and fed that poem to the AI engine for developing the faces, and then we integrated the thing and they created a video, right? And this they did in a record time. Like, they would not have been able to do this unless these tools existed. So because these tools exist, we can now do things much faster, better, and so on. So the idea of integrating these tools to create something new, I think, would be the biggest challenge now, right? For example, I can give you a more recent example, like Android developers existed, right? But what did Android developers do? A large part of it was for people to invent new things that you can do with apps, right? So I have a new app to do something. I have a new app to do something else. All of these things required, they had something before, and it required some people to have certain skills. They didn't need to have skills to write basic code. For example, to sort a list. They may not have known how to sort a list in the most efficient way, but they could still use things that were built by other teams to build new apps, right? The same way now, even though people don't know how to write a poem, they can still use it and then build something different, which we have not seen before, or something that is creative and different, and we have not been able to do this before, simply because everybody doesn't have all the skills. So if you can fill up some skills, or you can make those, you can fill up bits and pieces of what you are not great at with the tools that is available to you, I think you can do much better. You can come up with new things which you would not have thought of before, because you didn't possess that skill.
It definitely makes it more interesting for an individual to try out new things as well, because.
So I can give you an example of one of our ex employees. So he was working with us in to create in a creative space. So he would create different bylines and copies, etc. And he at some point he moved out, he moved on, and he wanted to do different things. Now he's doing something very interesting. So he's become a DJ, and all of his music is computer generated. So he's now sending his. He was not necessarily an artist himself, where he could produce the music or play the keyboard or something of that sort. But he had a ear for music, right? He knew what is good. He had a sense for it. So now he can now produce his own music, and now he's publishing it on different platforms. He's also doing some shows in some not festivals, but like a DJ club or something of that sort, right? So he has invented a new career for himself, where he did not even think that career could exist.
Okay, so I have a scenario. Let's say somebody wants to build a basic tool. You talked about building tools over the existing tools, but how does somebody go about building a tool from scratch in this segment?
So one thing that most of these tools they're API based. It's not just interface based. So with some very basic security credentials, you need to get some API key and a few credentials by signing up with these things. You can you can utilize their services. So for example, you can give a prompt using an API to, let's say, a ChatGPT or a Midjourney, etc. And also of course to DaveAI, that you can give a prompt and get an output from as a result of the prompt, right? The output might be synchronous, which means that you make an API call, and in the response of the API call you get the response. Or in some cases like Midjourney, it is an asynchronous API call, where you make an API call, and after some time you check if the output is ready, and then we get the output. So there are different ways that people do it. So this is the basis of starting to build. So now, just like when we said Android, when we're building that, you needed an Android repository and etc. and a software development kit for Android, or a development kit from Android, and you could then build Android apps based on that. Similarly, the API is the foundation of building something on top of that. So now, for example, if you want to create something like a music generation thing, right? So you can now integrate, let's say, ChatGPT, which gives you textual responses, and you can then integrate, let's say, another, I can't recall the name, but there are some tools which generate music based on the prompt or based on something like that, right? So you can sort of you can combine the two and then produce music with a song, a fully well written song, and things like that, right? So you can just combine these different tools and build something by yourself, and it is fairly easy because of the fact that they are API based. And most of these tools, including ours, would be free until a certain number of API calls for everybody. And of course, if you want to use it for an industrial purpose, like using it for providing service to somebody else, then of course that would be charged. But if you want to do it for yourself, most of the times it is free at the current status. It will change, and there will be different ways that people come up for monetizing this. But as of today, I think people want to increase the usability and number of people who can use it, and I think that's where we are currently.
And do you think there are any ethical considerations?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are tons of ethical considerations, and I think there's a lot that the politicians of our world have to catch up with. I think they are the ones who are really going to be moved out of the legal profession, the political profession. These are all things that are really where they are going to be have to adapt also, right? They will adapt, I'm sure, because that's how the world goes. But that's something they may not have realized yet, that they need to adapt. So for example, you can create now videos of celebrities without them having said anything, right? With their deep fakes, you can do deep fake voices, deep fake images, etc. Now, which is okay, right? You can do that. But can you monetize those videos? right? There's one part which is the misinformation, right? Even if the celebrities do allow them to do it, let's say that I've given permission, how does attribution go to it, right? Secondly, for example, now if you ask OpenAI or ChatGPT to write a poem, it's not writing poem from anything that is there, right? It's trained on all the different poems that exist in the world, right? And it includes a lot of contemporary poets who are actually doing it, and they would otherwise lose on their income because of the fact that ChatGPT is using their data to train itself, right? So how do you attribute correctly, right? That's a very important question. It's similarly for artists, because right now whatever DALL-E or Midjourney is producing, they are based on all the different graphic images that existed, photographers who have taken actual photos of real things, other graphic designers who have done, artists who have done many different things. So it's a combination of all of that. How do you attribute to them, right? And of all of this is coming out the chances for these people to monetize is going to get less, right? We are already seeing the repercussions of that. We can see that in Hollywood, there is a writers guild has gone on a strike for exactly the same reason. Then the actors have joined this because they also want attribution for things that people have used their faces and their imagery for, and so on, right? So these are some things that is a very gray area, and we need to quickly come up with problems in that solutions in that the legal and the political framework. There is also the other question of misinformation, especially when it's textual things, right? If you see a lot of news media, so if you see, let's take Google for example, right? Now Google is basically just an aggregator. It doesn't produce any news, but since people use Google to consume most of the news today, right? Although the actual people who produce the news, they have lost their total revenue. The media companies who actually produce the news have lost their revenue by around 50%, and that revenue has been taken up by Google, all put together, right? So now it's basically so search engine is also an AI, right? I mean, it's a more primitive version of the current AI, but it is still an AI for sure. And what has happened is now we can see that AI is actually utilizing all the production of these news media, and not necessarily paying them enough, but taking a big chunk of the pie of whatever their revenue should have been, right? Something similar is going to happen with AI now, that all these artists and writers and things like that, although it is their contributions from all of these things which is going to be taken by AI and processed in a way and given to a lot of and going to be consumed by even more number of people, right? So how do you attribute, how do you again go back to that? That's a very important question for the business leaders to say, how does the monetization happen? How will that affect how media is consumed, right? It's very important. Then we also have this problem of fake news, right? We already have it quite a bit, and it used to take a lot of time for people to generate fake news because humans had to write it.
They had to be creative about it.
Yeah, now you can automate the whole thing, right? You can have bots which sort of feed on itself. So you create new things, and then there is a reactionary thing, bots which read that and then amplify it, and so on. So the effect and if fake news is still very direct fake, but misinformation is still very is not easily classified, right? Because it could be partially true or it could be somewhat true. There are a lot of things that come with misinformation. So how do you take it from there, right? Because it's difficult to judge in this way. So I think that the ethical considerations about veracity of the information is going to get much harder and harder to find when the sources are obscured, right? So if you do a Google search, you can at least understand that, okay, this is the person. You can try to guess the veracity of it based on what is the source of it. But when the knowledge is accumulated and presented to you, then you cannot identify the source of that knowledge and that specific statement, right? Well, broadly everything might be correct, but a specific one or two statements might be wrong. which might lead you to have the wrong impression or or form the wrong opinions, right? And that is very dangerous, for sure. So there are definitely ethical concerns, and there definitely is ethical concerns over where this is disseminated, where this information is disseminated. So yeah, for sure that these kind of things are going to be tough with us. We'll have to combat this in a different way.
I'm sure.
And,
And it's really interesting that we are having this conversation, and like a lot of things from the past and what is happening, and there is a visualization for the future as well. Okay, so at this point I would like to ask you if you can share with us, what do you think the future will be like? Are you hopeful about it? What do you think about it?
Oh, I'm absolutely hopeful. I think the pace of development of AI will just will have a huge impact on how people do things. The kind of work that people will do will change, of course, but at the same time, I think that the future is looking quite interesting for me, because for me this was the field that I was working on and developing, and in a way it has come to fruition from the years that I have worked on it, and to see that it's getting adopted in like at a scale like as it is now is absolutely a positive thing for me. It doesn't mean that there are negative aspects of it, and you have to be careful and every tool can also hurt, and you need to know what are its limits and how to use it. And I think that's where we might fall short, right? To quote like a nuclear bomb, for example, is you can of course use nuclear energy for great good, right? But you need to know what damage it can do too, and without knowing that damage, it's very, very difficult to see a future that is always bright. I think just like we'll make a few mistakes, we will have negative impacts due to AI, but I think we will learn, grow from it. We will reach a better place than we were before, in spite of those mistakes. That's what I think.
And would you like to recommend any reading for the readers, for me, for everyone?
I don't I don't remember a lot of the names of the authors, etc. But there's this book called Person, Thing, Robot, right? Which is I think his name is something Gunkel. I forgot his name. Richard or David Gunkel, I forgot. You can look it up. I think that's a good place. It's about the moral ethics and what are the legal frameworks that AI will need to have. It's a very interesting read. If you want to read anything tech related, I think Andrew Ng, he has authored a few books. He is a very good reading starting point for that. There are many authors who have written about AI and very interesting things. You could also, of course, if you want completely non-technical, I think Isaac Asimov, he's of course very old, and many of his ideas of what AI would look like is still quite outdated, and it doesn't look like that. But there are many of the ethical and moral problems that he posed at that time, which are still relevant, right? How do you make an ethical choice about how to use AI, in what ways can you use them, and things like that. And going ahead, I think many of the things that he has talked about as Asimov, without going, if you just ignore the detailing part, because he was trying to predict the future, and of course the future didn't turn out like how he predicted it, but the humanness of the stories that he wrote are still there. We are still humans, and that part doesn't change, right? The way we behave, the way our mentality works, how people do or take decisions, what are the motivations for the people, they are pretty much the same. So I think it's very interesting, although it is around 80 years old.
Of course. Okay. Thank you very much, Anant. It has been really, really enriching for me personally. I think I host this with a personal interest, but just to learn. But I'm sure our audience will enjoy it, will look at up will be interested in knowing more about all that you mentioned. And if you're listening to this is DaveAIR, and we just recorded our first ever episode for Generative AI. And if you like this, please share this, subscribe to us, and like this, and let us know what you think about this episode. Until next time, take very good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.